Alright, we're going to be doing a book review. Jeremy Wade's How to Think Like a Fish. Really good book. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. It was really good. Some of the chapters dragged on a little bit, but overall it was a really good book. It's supposed to be a book that gives you fishing tips and stuff, but it had a lot of really cool stories of Jeremy Wade. And if you don't know who Jeremy Wade is, sorry, he is he's a biologist, known as the best fisherman throughout the world. He's got his TV show on Animal Planet. I think it's Animal Planet. River Monsters. Great show. Definitely check it out. But yeah, the book is How to Think Like a Fish by Jeremy Wade, and we'll just go through some notes. I didn't write down the stories. What makes the book good is not the fishing advice, but the actual stories he has of catching fish and going to different places throughout the world. He's gone a lot of really cool places, but I just kind of wrote down the fishing tricks, so we'll go through some of his tips and stuff, and then yeah, that'll be it. So the first part of the book was called Source. So yeah, he had told a story about a fish being hooked from the fish's perspective, kind of the idea of how to think like a fish, right? And there were some tips. Find the perfect time to set the hook. Too much of a pause, it won't set, and too long, it'll be ejected. Part of one of the stories, Jeremy was shot on an accident while fishing in Europe as a teenager, shot by a farmer. So he is a niche fisherman focusing on rare fish and big fish. He goes all over the world and fishes, so he's not your average, bass fisherman or something like that. So he targets different species, so he's always having to change his tactics and change it up. He's not just fishing for the same thing every time. Another tip: be stealthy, do not disturb the fish. And then I got a quote here from him: the best science is creative, and great art has deep logic. Then he has this formula: B plus P plus T equals F, bait plus place plus time equals fish. And then he says the only way you lose a fish after hooking it is because of human error. He said the fish your life depends on it, so not just to passively fish, but be attentive while you fish. Panic is a sign of failure to deal with crisis. He said take a compass. That's something I have not practiced. I don't take a compass when I go fishing. Adrenaline isn't a mind expanding drug, which is true. So when you have adrenaline, you're in a different state. So that's part of being alert. Fish in the right place. More for tips. Place is a component with the widest range of possibilities, so you really want to try different places. Finding places about good intelligence, using local knowledge, and then oh yeah, I have a note here from because I was in the Keys when I started reading this book. First day in the Keys, I saw a nurse shark while I was swimming. That was pretty cool. And then part 2 of the book, Stream. So there's stick or twist, stay in the same location or try new. He says it's worth exploring. Think like a fish. Fish like to hide where the current will feed them. Fish look for comfort, food, and safety, kind of like people. I don't have to go through the chapters, but something simple. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, so it's pretty much fishing is turning something simple into something valuable. Hook and worm into a fish, right? You take a hook, worm, boom, you get a fish. Something simple into something valuable. Energy input, which is calories, plus X, which is human inventiveness, equals energy output, which is the fish. Another little equation he had there. Catching big fish requires a mix of experience and open mind. Abandon local intelligence sometimes and go off of first principles, which are the principles we've already outlined. Fish where the fish are, which is an obvious statement. There's a lot of obvious tips in here. The book wasn't... The tips were good. Like, it made me think a lot, but the book wasn't made by the tips, and the book wasn't really about, like, the whole book wasn't like, oh, do this and do that and do this. No, it was mostly stories, and then he'd give you tips from his stories, right? So it was a lot more interesting than just reading, like, a fishing, like, tip book, you know, how to fish 101. It was more stories with the tips embedded in the stories, which made it really interesting. The more times you cast, the more chance you will have of catching a fish, only if the bait is in the right place. So when you're looking for a fish, see if you can see them. Look beyond the surface, so look like at the bottom of the water, not just surface level. You should be stealthy while you're fish spotting. Read the water. Don't let the fish see you because you could spook them. Deep water on the outside of bends and rivers. Always check the current. That way you can kind of tell where the fish might be. In lakes, it's harder to tell, but with absent of current, the signs are easier to see. Fish into the wind unless too cold. Yeah, I don't really know why that is, but vibrations are an extra dimension / sense fish experience, and we must remember that while fishing. That's why there's actually specific lures that'll send like signals and vibrations, and the fish can detect those, and then they'll be attracted to that lure. Take your time not to scare off fish, vibration, sounds, movements, etc. Keep movement slow, so if you're not stealthy, you're not going to get a fish. And the next part was lake, because the book was broken up into parts. He had some good tips here for muskie and walleye. While he was fishing for muskie, oh yeah, he just gave like tips on like the lures and techniques, big circle and figure 8 technique. Same thing with like walleye. He gave some techniques, lower weighted jig hook with minnow, to bottom, bring it up a fraction and gently twitch it up and down. And then he says for heavy fish you need heavy gear, obviously. A lot of people, like, just passive fishermen don't know that. Like, I didn't know. When I went shark fishing in the Keys, I didn't know what kind of gear I needed. I was going to try it just based off my pike fishing setup, which was stupid. I actually had to go to a fishing store, and then they actually gave me the right gear, and I bought a whole new reel, an expensive reel for that. I'm still sad that I didn't get the shark in. I hooked one. I didn't get it in. I had to end up cutting the line. Check out the Churches, Cages, and Creatures channel. I think I have a video on that there. Alright. He says overkill is okay, so even if you are bass fishing and you have like a setup for pike, overkill is okay, right? It's okay to have line strength that is way overkill for what you're fishing for. You know, if I have 50-pound line and I'm only fishing for bass, it's okay. You know, you don't have to go under. Like, you're not proving anything by going under. You know, you want to catch the fish, so overkill is okay. He says always be prepared to catch the biggest fish you could catch where you are fishing. It's smart. So then precast planning. When swimming in fast water, never put your feet down. Sharp rocks. Yeah, that a tip for swimming, because he's an extreme fisherman, so he'll, like, if he has to get in the water and swim somewhere to get the fish, he will, and he's told stories about it. Again, I recommend reading this book just for the stories. The stories are great. Oh yeah, so he goes on a spat about how sports are primarily physical, fishing is primarily mental, which I agree. Fishing's not a sport. Practice casting techniques before a fishing trip in your yard or somewhere else. He has a lot of techniques on knots, so there's lots of different knots. He recommends half-blood knots, the Palomar, the knotless knot, which is redundant, but and then the Grinner uni knot, which he said was best, the uni knot. And then now we get to the next part, river. he tells a couple diving stories, which were really good. He touched a Nile crocodile underwater. Yeah, so he says presenting the bait correctly is vital. Place index finger on the line so you can feel the fish bite. I've actually started doing that, so I'll put my finger, like he said, on the line, and then it actually helps. You can kind of feel the line when the fish is biting or when they're playing with the lure or your worm. He says only use one rod because less is more. So pretty much you're able to focus on that rod and you don't have two to look at. And you get one on, you can put your complete focus on it. I used to fish with two different rods and I'd go back and forth between them, but now I just stick to one kind of. Because he is right, you're able to focus on it more. Yeah, so then he goes on, he says, respect fish and wilderness, which I agree with. He says there's significance to old myths and superstitions, which is something I strongly believe, not just with fishing, but with everything in general, right? Like, I'm religious, so I believe in superstitions and old myths and stuff as being an important aspect of life. At the very least, they teach us things about today that they could not understand back then, but now we can take that and learn from it. And that is kind of his stance with that, too. Importance of presentation, so you want to present the bait correctly, test out new ideas, be opportunistic, things don't always go to plan, and then listen to your gut feelings, your unconscious brain. And then another tip, he just says, use double barrel crimps on multi-strand wire, that is for big fish, follow, or look for details, the knots, the sharp, the hookness, wow. The shark hookness? No, I want to say the hook sharpness. I read that backwards. Dyslexic, maybe. Good undamaged line. Yep. Oh, and I just wrote down a note from when I was fishing for the shark in the Keys. I said I used a bonita, the head of a bonita as bait, so I cut off the head of a bonita with my fillet knife, and then I hooked it with a big, giant circle hook while attached to a steel leader. Put that leader on my line, used my new reel, and cast it out right off the beach, and that's where I hooked it. I don't know why I wrote that down there, but it's interesting. So yeah, now we get to the last part of the book, C. So he says, by 2050, commercial fishing could be deplete, just because of the way the fish are declining in rivers and lakes. I don't necessarily believe that, but that's what he says. It says, don't remove large fish from water. Be careful and quick with catch and release fishing. When he says don't remove large fish from water, I think he means like using that or something. I should have clarified that when I wrote that down. I'm not sure what he's saying there. Jeremy is an environmentalist, doesn't blame overpopulation, but overconsumption as the root problem. I kind of agree with that. Overpopulation is not a problem our world faces, it's overconsumption, and yeah, I'm not going to go too much into that, but yeah, I agree with him when he says overpopulation is not the problem, but overconsumption. I definitely agree. We're a very materialistic society. Everyone needs the newest thing now. He believes that democracy should work bottom up. I agree with that. I don't know why he got into politics a little bit. I think because he was talking about environmentalism in that chapter, and it's connected to politics because environmentalism has been made political. You know, you have the left saying that climate change is going to destroy the earth, which I don't really believe, but and then you got the right saying it doesn't exist. Well, there's obviously environmental problems and hazards we have in the world. Like, it's obvious. The lakes are polluted, the oceans are polluted, the air quality is polluted, everything's polluted. But saying the world's going to end because of cows farting, I disagree with that. But yeah, so he believes democracy should work bottom up, which is how democracy should work, but unfortunately it does not work that way. So he quotes some studies on meat consumption being harmful to the planet. I strongly disagree with that. I don't think meat consumption is harmful to the planet. Cows are not killing the planet. Cows have been on the earth forever. obviously not forever, but since we've been here, and when they weren't domesticated, they were free roaming. So I don't know. I think all that's a load of BS, but whatever. I like Jeremy Wade a lot, and he's not out here trying to push an agenda. He's a biologist, so other biologists say that's what's happening. He'll probably just read some studies and believe it, but there's a lot of other people who say that's not necessarily the case, and I don't know. You could change my mind, but I don't believe meat consumption is as harmful to the planet as many people think it is, and I also am not willing to stop eating meat and eat the bugs as Klaus Schwab would have us do. Alright, chapter 22 through 24. He says, take notes while you're fishing so you can remember what lures, what kind of fish you caught, where it was, etc. And then he reaffirms the stealth patient's research belief. I wrote down some of the cool fish he caught. Red-tailed catfish, mirror carp, mahseer, Goliath, tigerfish, arapaima, roach, chub, pike, catfish, piranha, muskie. He caught a lot of cool fish. Book. So that's it for my notes. The book is really good. I said I give it like an 8 out of 10. I expected a lot more like fishing tips and stuff. I didn't really know what the book was going to be about. I thought it was going to be like a fishing 101 guide, but it was really just stories, and then within the stories you'd get tips. But yeah, it actually worked really well that way. I liked reading the stories. He is a great storyteller, and he has a lot of really cool stories to read, so definitely recommend How to Think Like a Fish by Jeremy Wade. Alright, everyone have a good day.